skies, firefight calls. The stakes are high, turn the flame, heroes and spies. Control fire, where strategy lies. Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar, defeated weep. We blaze a way, we don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Controlled Fire, your monthly musings on Mantic's Firefight. I'm Sam.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Clive, or Cleric, as I'm most often known.
Wonderful. So this month, we've been very excited to see the Warpath Universe 2026 roadmap be released by Mantic Games. We can see that there's lots on the horizon, so to chat us through all the details, we're joined by Clive, aka Cleric. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So before we jump into all things Warpath Universe 2026 roadmap, let's do our From the Forward, where we chat about what's on our painting tables. Luke, what's on your painting table at the moment?
I think it's a story as old as time now of the last 6 months, because more orcs for my Kings of War slow grow are coming along, and in between bits that I need for that, still printing away some of those plague miniatures.
The plague is the epitome of a slow grow for this one?
Yeah, the even slower grow. It's just when I can muster up the courage to brave the torrential weather that we've had to get to the shed, if I'm not printing something for the Abyssal Dwarves, I'm going to put a print on for plague.
That's awesome. I mean, for myself, I'm almost at the end of my slow grow challenge. So listeners will recall that this is month 4 with 500 points a month. So last month I did manage to complete the 3 regiments of Black Souls and Soulless, and that was enough almost to get me to BrizCon. I then needed to do a very quick entry from my May painting challenge. I needed to get some Slave Orc Gore Riders and an Ironcaster done out of my May painting challenge in a week, and I did, and then was able to take them to BrizCon. I was very happy with how I did at BrizCon. So that was an excellent tournament.
Yeah, that was a podium, right?
It was. So I came in third, and there was some big names there and some excellent games. I think is the most important thing there. So very much enjoyed getting back into Kings after a few years away from the game. For this month, even though I've already been able to clear out the Slave Orc Gore Riders and the Ironcaster, it means I've only got 1 unit left to do for the month, but gee, I'm dragging my feet on it. It's this 1 unit of grotesques. It's the final thing in order to cap off 2,000 points in 4 months. And can I motivate myself to do it? Gee, it's hard. I'm eyeing off my Epic Warpath stuff. I'm looking at doing some Kings of War champions for my daughters. I just need to finish off this project. That's what's on my painting table, and gee, it's a drag.
It's less than 2 weeks left.
Yeah, I gotta get on it. How about you, Clive? What's on your painting table that you're able to tell us about? I'm sure you've got lots of special things at Mantic that you can't say.
Yes, I could show you my table at the moment, but there's some things on there that will excite people a little too much, so I won't show them off. I don't generally get an awful lot of time for painting anymore. Most of my stuff is I'll build it. That's the fun part for me, is constructing these cool armies and bases and stuff. Most of my kind of hobby time is absorbed painting Halo minis and playing Halo, and then designing or coming up with crazy things we could add to Firefight and Dead Zone. So, I've 3D printed some big stuff. So one of the things I showed off on socials recently was the Wolf Crawler. I rescaled them. I converted it into a Firefight scale, super heavy. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And everyone else that sees it goes, that's really cool. And that's kind of then where it springboarded an idea that later on we should do things like that. So obviously I didn't stop at a wolf crawler. I went nuts and 3D printed an awful lot of super heavy big things. So I might take a picture and I might show it off. I don't know.
Oh, that's incredible, because of course within Epic Warpath, the super heavies are big models there. So scaling them up to Firefight must make them utterly immense.
Yes, they can be absolutely monstrous. One of the minis that I created, if you want to call it a mini, is absolutely monstrous. A standard GCPS trooper is about as big as his toe. So
wow.
It's fun.
Well, you can show us after the show,
Will do. I'll send you a picture. It's good.
Awesome. I know that for the Lord of the Rings movies, because they were doing a lot of miniatures, inverted commas, for a lot of the filming there, but because they were so large, they actually coined the term bigatures, because they were just so huge. And it sounds like what you've been printing is bigatures.
Yeah, something along those lines, yeah. Because I just want to see some really big, cool stuff hit Firefight. And, I'd love it if we can bring all of those things to Annihilation modes and just make them bigger and bigger and bigger and better.
Ah, that sounds awesome. Well, but before we jump into things on the roadmap, Kai, would you like to tell us just a little bit about your gaming background? How did you start in the hobby and what drew you to Mantic Games?
Yeah, sure. I started back when I was about 13. I had a friend whose cousin painted GW minis. I remember he had some Chaos minis, and there were some of the really, really, really old metal Chaos Terminators. And I saw them, and it's dark little room, a few little models, and I just thought those are the coolest thing I'd seen. I'd done Tamir kits, I'd done the Revel kits, these little aeroplanes and stuff like that. And whilst they're cool, they were boring. they didn't excite me. And I saw these minis, and I just thought, wow. And so at that age, I went along to a GW store. And I still remember the store. It was run by a chap called Kevin. My local was High Wycombe at the time. And I went in, and you know what? It was amazing. You just saw this massive long table, and there was two groups of people. One of them was using orcs, one of them was using Space Marines. And you walk in, and all you hear is this humongous noise of "Wah!" And it was like, whichever side shouted loudest got to go first. And it sticks in my mind as the most thing that stands out from GW at that time was just like, wow, this is cool. What is this? What have I walked into here? And so I go in and I start playing with these minis, and I find Space Marines and obviously buy my first set, which is Space Marines. And they're all those crappy little monopose, tiny little minis. And so I get those to start painting. I converted, I stole the dining room table and put paints and minis everywhere. And I started building and building and building. And then as I got older, I got jobs, which then meant I had some money, which then meant every Saturday I'd go in and Kevin would put aside the model I wanted to buy that day, because I'd go at lunchtime and tell him. He'd stay a few minutes later at the end of the day so I could walk in with my cash that I'd just earned and gave it to GW. So my subscription to gaming was literally go to work, collect my cash, go to GW, give them my cash, collect my minis, and have a week of fun. And, that carried on. And I just never really stopped doing miniature gaming until I hit about, 19, 20, and real life kicks in. And, you got to get a career, you got to do a job, you got to do all this other stuff. So whilst my hobbying kind of waned a little as my working life kicked in, it never really stopped. I was very fortunate later on in life when I'd done loads of telecoms and boring jobs, proper jobs, sales and all sorts. Mantic was in a position where they were looking for someone to come on board and help with trade sales. And at that time, I'd done a lot of recruitment, I'd done my own freelance work, and I kind of was like, I need something a bit more reliable, stable, and in my mind, a little bit easier, just day-to-day job, 9 to 5, go and do that. And why not look at something that's hobby related? And I'd already heard of Mantic Games because I backed the Dead Zone Kickstarter. To this day, the thing that kind of I still say the reason I joined Mantic was for Ronnie Renton. And it was because when I ordered the Dead Zone Kickstarter, it went wrong. They sent me the wrong thing. It was terrible. I got in touch with them. They were like, yeah, we'll fix it, which is great. Rob Berman at the time was working there, and he sent me an email, and it was like, we'll send you this, we'll give you this book to make up for it. So out comes the next load of packages, and they were wrong as well. And I was like, guys, it's great you give me this stuff, but what I really would like was what I actually wanted. And so, at one point, I got a message from Ronnie, and it was just like, we're really sorry, we'll fix this for you. I'm sorting this out. And within a few days later, lo and behold, a package arrived. It was everything that I wanted and extra. And that kind of interaction with customers is what stayed in my mind for so long. That's why I asked, is there a position, could I work here? And then I started the job, and, I'm almost 9 years later, I'm still there. I've gone through various stages of trade sales. I've done the side project, which was digital things. I've looked at, a lot of the recruitment practices we've done over the years. And now, luckily, I'm in a position where I head up the digital stuff, which is how we deal with my mini factory, how the vault becomes more of a bigger thing, our digital stores there, and I have a larger role to play in how sci-fi shaped and what we bring to sci-fi. It's been an interesting journey, but, it's been great. Mantic is a great company to work for. If you've got passion and creativity, it will flow through at some point. I work very closely with the studio, I work closely with sales, I work closely with senior management. It's an interesting role, and no day is ever the same.
Well, I think, since you're talking to two people that have 3D printers and play just about every Magic game that exists, we're very happy that you've been taking on that, because we are making very good use of it.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Good to hear.
So before we look forward to 2026 or what's left of it, let's take a look back at 2025. There was a lot of new units released for Firefight, pairing the Vault releases with new rules in the Companion for Marauders, Asterians, Plague, and in particular, Veermen. Were you surprised by how quickly these were integrated into the game?
I wasn't surprised. There is a process to this stuff. Usually the process is, I think that would be cool. How do we do it? And then I'll brief it, and then I'll get something sculpted for it. And in the process of getting it sculpted, I also then reach out to the rules committee. So it usually involves a frantic message on Facebook going to Matt Green, or Claudio and Ian, going, I'm going to make this. Can you make rules for it? And then they'll go, oh, that's cool. Or a little bit more notice would be great. And I'll go, it's what it is. This is cool. It's coming. I'm going to make these. I can give it these guns. I can give these things. Would you like any extras? If so, I can try and make that happen as well. So it's all started off with the Dead Zone fixed point strike teams. And I was like, I really would like to do a fixed list thing where people can just quite easily download a pack. It tells them the minis they need. They don't have to worry about building a team for it. They're going to be thematic and fun. And you can have a little bit more of a fun time with them as an RC, creating custom rules that are just unique to them. And it doesn't break the game too much because they're going to be balanced against each other quite well. And no single fixed team outpowers any other team in the game. So the RC did a great job of balance. Then I kind of took that idea a little bit further, and I was like, what's a cool thing to do with the Vault is new unit tweaks that go on plastic frames. So you have your plastic bodies. All you really needed was some arms and some accessories to then potentially create new units. And that's where those Plague units came from. And then you get asked by the RC, could we do something for the GCPS? Or could we do something for the Veermen? We just could use a few more units. And it's like, instead of going out to the studio and going, we need to tool new plastic, which is incredibly expensive and hard to justify, or go to the resin team and try to go, we could use some more resin bits, and they're like, we're backed up till next year already. We're dealing with Epic here. We don't have the time. With digital, you get that massive advantage that we can come up with stuff, and a few months later we can release it. It's got beta rules, it's been tested, we've got the sculpts, they work with what we've already sold before, and that's where all this process happened. So I never really am surprised, because the whole process involves the RC and it involves digital to sculpt it as well. So when you as an end consumer see that pack pop up there, it's already been through the whole process anyway.
I mean, I can imagine, particularly for the Plague, because we know that the Ghoul Sprue really just makes two units in the game. It makes the Mortar Crew and it makes your regular ghouls. But now with all of these printable bits, you can get the Bruisers, you can get the Crushers. It's the same frames, but just some accessories, and you've got whole new units in the game.
Yeah, it'll be even better when you can print those plastic sprues yourself, won't it?
I think we'll be chatting about that a little bit later.
Should other factions be expecting new units in the future?
Always is the intention. So it comes back to, again, like I said, the rules committee asking. So the Firefight rules committee, they've got spreadsheets on everything, and they know what factions feel like they need a bit more. And generally, I'll try to plug those holes with them. So we'll go, this faction has X amount of units compared to these factions, and they have X amount of units. So we already kind of know where we should focus if we can. And sometimes it's the unlocking of plastic that allows us to do that. So some things aren't digital, for example. Some of the older stuff isn't in a format that we can release as digital. So to do them, we have to go and resculpt them all. And that's a bigger ask and a bigger challenge than quite simply just making a set of stuff to go on a plastic sprue. So it's not that we can't or won't, it's just it takes more time and resource.
Understood. I think that probably actually answers the question I was going to pose. This is a question on behalf of Mike, but I'm going to reframe it just a little slightly for my own selfish reasons. So Luke and I do love to tease Mike that although the other factions in the Vault all have their vehicle upgrades, the Forge Father Iron Ancestor bits, particularly for the Heloma, which is the one that Mike wants, isn't in there. Can you assure us that these won't be coming to the Vault so that we
They're
can
not
continue
digital.
to give Mike grief?
Oh, you can grief him as long as you like on that one. Unfortunately, the Iron Ancestor is not a digital sculpt. It predates, technology. It's old, and it was a green. It's not something that actually we have as a digital file. We have the Epic Warpath one, but the problem with that one is it's designed for Epic Warpath. If you scale it up, it doesn't really work very well. It looks a bit poor, and that's on design. It looks great in Epic, but it doesn't work when you scale it up. At the moment, there is something I'm working on that will get you something similar to that, but it's not the actual Iron Ancestor. And so at the moment, you can continue griefing for a while.
Yes, you hear that, Mike? No Helomals for you.
If they exist, I might have another look and see what I can get into the Vault, even if it's not the whole thing. But it just depends how it was sculpted originally and whether we have digital files.
So Firefight has just come to my mini factory with the new tribe. That's pretty cool. I am on the Walking Dead tribe, actually because I wanted all the zombies. And I think some of the cool cowboy models are pretty awesome to use for some other things as well. So that's cool. And by the way, the truck, the pickup, I actually use that. Yeah, I use that for a mule for my Marauders that's all kit bashed. So I really love all of even the non-Firefight models that you guys have got that I can then salvage things for to use in Firefight and add some variety. But have you found the My Mini Factory tribes have changed anything? Like, is the game reaching new audiences, or is sort of the way that sales get out there changing and morphing?
The Firefight tribe has actually been really interesting because we've had a lot of uptake from previous Frontier supporters and previous customers, but that's only around 40%. So about 60% of the people that join the tribe have never taken a Mantic digital service before. So we know that it's recruiting new players, and lots of people comment, and we get lots of messages, saying, I've been waiting to try this, but I've never gone that next step. It's done a wonderful job of just being able to go to those people and go, well, here's your next step. We made it even easier for you now. Just print it yourself. And it's working. And it climbs at a daily rate. It's not running away with anything. It's a nice quantity of players coming on board. And I think as the months progress, that number will just keep climbing because people will start having faith that, this is actually a real thing. We're going to keep supporting it. We're going to keep pumping stuff out via it. Some of the stuff people would have already seen on the Vault before. There is that element to it. And then there will always be something new to that Firefight tribe that we've never done before in digital. That doesn't actually mean it's new models. It just means, well, we've not done plastic, so we're going to do it via that method. At the same time, we're also putting things on the Vault so you don't feel too left out. If you're on the Vault, you've still got the core of what we're releasing, but you've already had a lot of it. Over the years, you've had it. So MMF just allows us to talk to new customers, new players, and people that aren't necessarily into Mantic yet.
Yeah, well, and I guess luckily for Mantic, it's a path forged by other games like One Page Rules as well. They're growing. They're not slowing down anytime soon. They're going from strength to strength, and they're a bit more of a beer and pretzels kind of game. They're not quite to the same depth as Mantic games.
I mean, Mantic Games is an actual proper studio. We have our own IPs. We've developed them. We do world-class IPs from other systems. You name Walking Dead. That was a big IP. You've got Halo's a massive IP. Going all the way back, you have Mars Attack. It was a big IP in its time. Recent things like Hellboy, we announced Plants vs. Zombies. We do lots of IP stuff. But at our core, we're still a game studio that owns its own worlds and IP and has been building them for over 15 years. It's an interesting melting pot at the minute. And I think MMS is just going to keep growing as more people like us come to it and put more game systems in.
And for Firefight, I saw on the roadmap we'd be expecting to have Plague and Forge Fathers as the next one coming down the pipe for the tribes.
Yeah, that's right. So over the next 6 months, 7 months, we will have lots of Enforcer stuff. We will obviously continue on with some Marauder bits. We will introduce the Forge Fathers. We will bring the Plague to it as well. And then it will culminate at the end of the year. We'll start bringing some nameless things as well. So there's our focus of 5 armies this year. And then going into next year, we'll switch that focus onto other armies. We've got a long plan ahead to keep supporting all the sci-fi world. Whether it's Epic, whether it's Firefight, whether it's Dead Zone. Digital will lead it, but the main physical will follow as well.
Because of course, when you can have the My Mini Factory giving you the models, and you can have the companion giving you the rules, there is the potential for it to go all digital. But I know also on the roadmap, we're expecting to have a full sci-fi update book, as in a paper book, which is super exciting. I saw that it was a sci-fi update book, so I'm guessing this is not just a Firefight thing. This is bigger.
It's the culmination of several different projects in one go. If you go back to the early of the year where we released a load of updates for Dead Zone and we released a load of updates for Firefight. Now, the intention was that would be a digital update because we have this great digital ecosystem where we can put rules. Following on from the Halo model, which is where here's your rules, they're all there, register for free, you can access rules. And then, the convenience of army lists is where you buy your memberships and you do that type of stuff. Both those systems got massive updates, almost 1.5 type updates. And the intention was always to put a PDF out. But then lots of other things happen and the digital team is quite small, right? So we can't always do everything I would love for us to do. And then Ronnie kind of said, this is big, we should do this and we should do that. And over the months, that kind of drags on a little bit more. So we never got to really do what we wanted, which is put this PDF out there. Studio resources are tight. They're working on big projects. We've all now seen what those big projects were and they've come and gone. And it kind of reached a point where people then are asking, we want a book. And it's well, you can't really justify a book for one little update. It doesn't work that way now in the world. Resources aren't what they used to be. Costs of things have gone up. And production runs are big numbers. You need to guarantee you can actually do them. So we decided to actually create a Warpath universe update. And in that, we've managed to put the Firefight update. So it's all going to print in that one. And in the Firefight one, there'll also be all the new units we plan to do over, say, the next 18 months as well. So that's the first time we're actually going to start putting things in there that aren't actually out yet, but will be shortly. We then put the Dead Zone update in it as well, giving you all the new listing for Nameless at the same time. Same rules as Firefight. All the Nameless Army update will go in that book too. We then put the Epic update in it as well. So for Epic, a newer game system, there's not so much to update. But there is a lot more units coming because part of the campaign later on this year is to do Wave 2 and 3 as digital. So we all know what Wave 2 is. It's the next 4 digital armies. But Wave 3 is new units for all the armies. And that's going in the book at the same time. So we've now got 3 sections of this book. The 4th section of the book is all about the global campaign and the lore. We're zooming into the Nameless a bit more. We're looking at the main battle zones that they're taking on, and the lore will progress. They're now an aggressive race. They're not passive. They've had their restructuring, a new leader's come in, and they are, to coin the phrase, they're religious nut jobs. They want to push the Nameless expansion. So they're coming into the Mariana Trench. They're coming into the worlds nearby. We've got some writing happening from Rob Berman, who's doing a lot of the lore writing for it as well. And that's the first part of the book. You've got this big sci-fi book that covers the campaign, the lore expansion, the Dead Zone stuff, the Firefight bits, and then the Epic bits as well. So if you play sci-fi, that one book gives you all the access you could want to all the updates and all the expansions. And if you're dabbling, you do Epic because you came on with Epic and you're kind of looking at 28 mil sci-fi, well, that book will really hook you in. Likewise, if you play Dead Zone but you want to go up to Firefight, the book will give you what you need to do that. And then it goes the other way. So you already do Firefight, well, you've already got all your models you need to play Dead Zone. You might just want some terrain and you can join in that way. Digital doesn't preclude any of those physical things. All we're doing is leading that clarion call to say, sci-fi is really big and we want it to be even bigger. So we're just recruiting new players at this stage. We're giving access to stuff we didn't previously do in the hope that we bring more players on and we weave this campaign through to everybody so that when we start the noise and we do it late summer and there's a nice big campaign, you guys are in anyway, you're playing it. You're going to jump on the campaign and have some fun with it. But now what we hope is that enthusiasm ignites your friends and ignites the clubs and ignites other people to join in that previously weren't. And I think you probably appreciate from your area of the world, logistics aren't necessarily always your friend. Getting product and stuff isn't always very easy. Whereas when you 3D print it, you can set up these armies. You can get these things instant. You can print it next day. Your friend goes, I'd like to play this, but, ordering from there is going to take me this long. Shipping is this much. And you go, it's all right. I can sort you out the starter army. Here you go. Start playing. Now your order arrived. You can carry on. I think it's really exciting. Whether you're a printer or just a player that buys from your local store, there's going to be something this year for you for sci-fi.
Sounds absolutely immense. Like that book. Obviously, I'm very excited by the lore because it sounds like, I think it's the Ulogs that they were the ones who were pursuing the more aggressive path towards the GCPS. Yes. It sounds like the Ulogs have come out on top.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we did the previous campaign. We had the namers coming in it. We had the fixed point team that we made for them, which had a little bit of story to them as well. And so there's little bits of the story already happened. And all we're doing now is just progressing. We're moving the story on. It's kind of a greater plan, a greater vision that over the next 3-4 years, the whole Warpath universe has a big expansion as well. So I think there's loads of things we could explore. From a lore point of view, I'm quite keen to see what that 6th sphere of expansion would do. Where do we go with it?
6th sphere, you heard it here first.
I love that idea of go for new. I want to explore and bring things to the Warpath universe that we've not done. Some things you could expand where we've touched on things already. Examples, and these are not things that might happen. This is where my head goes. So, what if the Matsudan split back away from Asterians? What would an entire Matsudan army look like? How would that look in Epic? How would that look in Firefight? What would be missing from them to make things like that happen? And those are questions that I ask and I put through my slides and I go through the process. And then it would be like, well, are there any other things that we've done within Firefight and the Warpath universe that would be cool if we could zoom in a little and expand more? One of the things I looked at was like the Azor. They're cool. We've only really touched on, 1 or 2 different things with them. There's a Dreadball team. Mm-hmm. What's their lore? How could we expand them? What if this expansion led to a bigger colony or a bigger world of them? And what if actually they were an army size? What other creatures could we bring into them to flesh out and make an army of? And that's the kind of process that we go through when I look at the next 3-4 years of how do we grow the worlds? Not just what products and what armies and what models make sense, but how do we take this cool universe that we've built up over 15 years and take it to 20 years? Where does the next step go? There's loads of worlds we've never touched or spoken or explored in the existing universe. But then I'm quite keen on the 6th sphere. I like the idea of going out there and finding new weird stuff that just doesn't match anything we've done before. Because why not? Space is a big place.
I don't know that I've ever seen Sam so excited. He's dripping enthusiasm right now. Maybe
but it's exciting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, all Goblin army. Goblin split.
I am a fan of doing some goblins.
Yeah,
I don't think we'll see them split from Marauders much. Yeah. But I did the nuts and bolts team, and that was cool. It was a really, really nice little opportunity to do some sci-fi goblins and expand them in a little bit. It's one of those things I'm very, very keen to see happen shortly is Firefight gets a nice little unit of elite goblins, building on what we did before and having some more bodies for them so that, the Firefight committee can go away and create a cool new profile of a unit that say, goblin guerrillas that are not core troops, but specialists. I quite like the idea of that a lot. You never know. Maybe you'll see them soon.
I like the sound of that as well.
Very fun.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
I also love the idea of a whole Matsudan army. I'm sure I am not alone there. About half of the Asterians that I'm fielding right now are Matsudan. So they're such beautiful models as well.
They're cool. And, Space Lizards is the thing. People have done them and we've done them for a while. We've had Matsudan for a very long time. And that's because Dreadball obviously introduced them. And then when we did 2nd edition, we also had then a whole team revamped of them. And, they've existed for a while and they're a cool concept. But for argument's sake, there's an awful lot more we could do with them. When you look at digital and what we did with Kings of War, when we took the Salamanders, the first thing we did was look at them and go, that unit, that would be really cool in digital, wouldn't it? Those would be cool to have actual sculpts for them. So we went out and did it. I'm really proud of that Kings of War army, how it appears and how it actually fleshed out. The newer models are still in keeping with the Salamanders. but they're new, and they're obviously slightly different. We've got a slightly different style to them, all the way up to the newest one, which was Warpath on the Fire Drake. An awesome model, and who doesn't love dinosaurs? I mean, sci-fi, fantasy, anyone. It's an immediate win for a lot of people.
I was going to say, I also love the
saying,
more
it'd be
reason
cool.
that the new salamanders look different is because they didn't go through the Winter's War needing to energize themselves with fire, and so they have a very different aesthetic for that reason.
Yeah, and that's the studio doing what they do. They are tying things in quite a long time ahead with lore and progressing stories. We're not just selling models, we are building worlds, whether it's fantasy and Panathor or whether it's, the Warpath universe. You don't really create a success by just selling a mini. There's got to be a reason, there's got to be a hook, there's got to be a story. You need novels, and there are more novels now than there ever was. Winged Hussar do a great job of getting more stories out there and breathing more life into our worlds. And now I think it's at the point where we can take inspiration from those stories and create minis for them. As you can see with the recent releases for Kings of War, where we've got some Forces of the Abyss characters that actually come from the storylines. It's gone full circle. Hopefully sci-fi does the same.
We have spoken in the past before about how cool it is that Mantic sometimes creates a good marriage of modeling choices with lore reasoning, like the reason why everything is so cube based for the sci-fi is because that's how they're standardized shipping, right? So that's why the cube nature comes across. It's not because it's just a weird thing that we did for game reasons. It's it's got an actual lore reason behind it as well, which is really cool.
That's because we're all nerds, right? Mantic, we're all into this. We're all gamers. We're all hobbyists. We all live, breathe this stuff too. So it feeds through when you see products and you see the things that we want to do. And I don't necessarily think everything we always release is to my taste, because it's not. But I don't play everything. I don't collect everything. The things that I love to do and I do them. And our fans are the same. We get some super hardcore fans that will do every single game we release. And, thanks. That's great. We love you. But equally, if you only want to play Firefight, that's equally great. There's a lovely range of minis for you. And we're not going to stop producing things for them. But what we do release generally is always going to be what's cool for this game, what's going to help grow the game, what is missing, and put it in there.
For the previous global campaign, so this is when we had the Night Stalkers come through. Obviously, they were a very exciting addition to the Warpath universe. I recall there was the Maison Labs website, which I spent quite a bit of time going in and solving the puzzles in order to get the snaps of the Night Stalker releases and watching the rebels deface the site and show the galaxy the real Maison. Are we going to be expecting anything like that for this one? I really hope we can.
Something slightly like that, yeah. That was a large bit of work done by Elliot, who's also in digital. It was really cool. Just drove engagement. It was something a bit fun and quite fitting within the universe. This time round, it's probably not as relevant because obviously it's not a Maison mess up that's releasing Nameless. It's them. And it's a bit different. So I think the story is more led from a GCPS point of view, but the star of the show is really the Nameless and what they plan to do and who they attack and how they do it all. Yes, there'll be a campaign website. I don't know what it will look like just yet and can't think of the features to it, but it worked very well last time. It worked really well with Edge of Insanity when we did that one. It worked well with the fantasy ones. So, why wouldn't there be? It's what we like to do.
Well, the Nameless are actually what stopped me going for the new StarCraft game, because I've always wanted to do a Zerg army, and I had thought about that with Tyranids before, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Yeah. And then with Nameless coming, I was like, yes, I'm going to paint Nameless like Zerg. And then actual Zerg came along, but I'm like, no, I'm going to scratch that itch with Nameless.
You can stay there. I'll do this instead.
Yeah.
Stick with the game system you already know. It's fine. But yeah, they're going to be cool. It's new. I always like the Nameless as an idea. And when we did them, they were great, but they were very much, it's a board game piece. So after you've kind of collected them, you buy one or two, they're very monopose and they are what they are, which is perfectly fine for a board game. They absolutely fit that entirely. Then when we started using them, we released them on the Vault and we did the digital files. It allowed you to then customize them a bit. It allowed you to at least mirror things. It allowed you to just 3D print to a better quality than PVC can do. That's generally always going to be the case. And then, it opened up a little bit more, but they're never quite there as an army faction. They were never quite there as good as they could be. And so when we're releasing them as an entire army, you get the opportunity to go back and redo them. So the new quality will be amazing. The new hard plastic is fantastic quality stuff. And I think it'll be really cool to see them shine in the right way. We get there in the end. At first, it's a board game piece. It's fine. Then it was, as best you can do in resin, or you're 3D printing them, which is great. But ultimately, a Star of the Show needs proper plastics. It needs, army building level plastic, which is what hard plastic lets us do.
Well, the benefit of the monopose gaming pieces is there's no assembly required. Which is...
Luke.
Yeah.
Well, that might be your favorite part of the hobby, Clive, but it's definitely not mine.
Yeah. Sometimes, single piece minis are great. Sometimes push fit minis are great. And sometimes you just need a big project that's got, 100 parts to it. It's each to their own.
Well, that's why I like the whole reason I'm subscribed to the Walking Dead tribes is because they're single models to print off. Yep.
Because you don't want to assemble plague zombies.
I don't want to assemble 120 of them. That's for sure.
You've got a blender though, right? You can just download STLs, put them in there, and then boolean them, and there you are. You can get rid of calories. You can join them all up.
I was explaining to someone recently the best thing about using the STLs is because the coordinates of the files that have been saved, although they're separate files, it means that when you open them together in Blender, it reassembles itself automatically. So I can just load them up. I think about maybe 5% of your models aren't like that. They're sort of not coordinated right. But when the ones that have the coordinates, load them all in, push them 1/10 of a millimeter together so that there's no gaps between them, and export one STL, and off you go.
Exactly. And for the most part, that is how most of the models are. There will always be the odd file that isn't built like that, and it's because it's got multiple sculptors or it's done at different stages. So obviously it's got different orientation. But you've only got to learn how to use, GX, GY, GZ, and you will be able to move things around quite easily. And that's how I do it. If I'm given a file like, the GCPS Battle Mech, when that comes through, it was a mashup of lots of different orientations. All the bits were there, but not a single piece lined up to where it should be. So you spend in an hour just shuffling this mini around on your screen to get it in the right position, just so you can render it and take a picture for a website, and then you're like, well, if I just, whilst it's there, join all the parts up that I think I can print in one go and then print it in, fewer pieces. But that's part of the fun of 3D printing. It's part of the hobby. You learn how to use these tools. I always think step one is, you bought a 3D printer. So you go to Thingiverse and you download some basic files that are single and easy to print, you get them. Then you realize this was made for FDM and not resin, or this was made for resin and not FDM. So you learn the difference between those. Then you kind of progress to cults, and you might buy your first paid file and you download it. And then you're like, oh, Mantic's got this. So you subscribe to the Vault, you get all your files coming through. And then you learn about how to support things, and you're learning, oh, actually, I can cut it here, I can support it there, I can merge it here. And then you get full down the rabbit hole, and you're learning how to sculpt, and you learn how to cut things up, and you learn how to duplicate mirroring, and how to digitally kit bash. And it's like, yeah, you're fully in at that point. And then you start doing crazy things like tell your work, we should do this 3D printing lark.
Yeah, it is actually a lot of fun doing the 3D kit bashes, learning how to rig armatures in Blender so you can repose models that don't come as multi-parts.
Yes.
It's all loads of fun. I've spent probably more hours doing that to vault models than I have actually assembling and painting my physical models.
I'm swimming against the stream here because I like the pre-supported ones, which I drop onto my print bed and hit print and then cut them off, wash them, cure them, and then glue them together like they were any other kind of model. I guess I'm a different company.
I haven't printed a Hellfane yet because it won't fit on my print plate pre-assembled. So it's still sitting there waiting to be printed.
You just print it in bits like I have and then assemble it and then paint it.
Sounds like work.
I was so happy with the way the Hellfane turned out and stopped around at Brisbane. It was a nice centerpiece to the army. So
well painted too. Looks great.
Oh, thank you, man. So with super heavies, obviously we've seen those sorts of things in Epic Warpath. To what extent is Epic Warpath sort of the success of that influencing the direction of Firefight?
So it's not that it's actually anything to do with success of Warpath. It's done very well, and I think as a recruiter, it's brilliant. It's bringing a lot more people into the game than just focusing on Firefight would have done. Different scale, and it appeals to people that like it. It's more that when you look at Firefight and you think, look at Annihilation Mode specifically and doing big battles with lots of vehicles, Epic Warpath allows us to see that there's perhaps a bit missing from that experience. I think you look at other game systems and you see super heavies are a thing that are in a lot of games. Big models, centerpieces, you might only have one of them in your force, but they're awesome. And Epic has shown us that, they are great. And some of them can transfer across quite well. So we look at it and I think, well, that's a nice way to expand the game and make Annihilation modes even better. Give people a little bit more resources, give them some more toys to play with, and have some fun with it. So I am obviously madly printing a lot of very big stuff just to see if it's feasible, for one, how the files hold up, where we need to adjust them and improve qualities. Because, when we scale up something, you take the hammer tank that we revealed for the Marauders. Simply scaling it up doesn't work. The model wasn't designed that way. So what you end up with is a very squished tank that nobody actually can fit in. And it lacks the details, and the rivets go wonky, and it just doesn't work. The tracks aren't detailed enough, so when you blew it up, it kind of just looked really bad. It's like you've ordered, your tank off Temu. So we look at those, and then I go, right, this is a contender. It's genuinely a useful thing. You probably only want one or two of them, so we could possibly look at doing things like that in resin kits and selling them for people that can't print. But ultimately, you can print this at home. That's my benchmark is, can you print this? And if the answer is yes, does it meet the quality of the rest of the minis at that size? And if the answer is yes to that, great. The Ripper Hulk is an example of this as well. Simply blowing up the Epic one looks terrible. Doesn't have any leg detail. You can see that the boxes don't quite go together very well. And when it's down at Epic scale size, it doesn't matter. You don't see it. It's like a token piece. It's irrelevant. It doesn't detract from the quality of the mini. It looks great at that size. So then we start blowing things up that you realize they're not really good at that size. So we had it upscaled and we had it up detailed. So Scott went back to it, detailed all the legs, changed the posing a little. I added more things to the gun so that you got the option of the flamer as well. And that was based on the rules committee going, it'd be cool if we could add an auxiliary, if we could have a flamer to this as well. It's like, sure, no problem. It's going to go on the arm and it's going to look like this. Does that work? And they go, yeah, that does. And that's how the process works. Part of the madness is me going, I want a GCPS battle mech. I'll print it in Firefight scale. So I blow it up and I go, it's not big enough. And then I go, well, we've got a plague one in Epic, don't we? And there's a head of a pilot that's visible on the plague one. So I go, how much do I need to upscale that so that the head matches the plague head of a Firefight model? So I did it. And then I'm like, oh, I've got to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And the percentages is balmy at this point. So then you end up with a miniature that you can't really print because it's too big. So then I go about loop cuts and I break it down into a smaller kit and I hollow the whole thing out. And then I start printing, and before you know it, 3 liters of resin later, I'm a lot of hours later. And I've got a 28mm battle mech that's the right size and looks incredible. And anyone that walks past my room sees it and they're like, whoa, wow. And you're like, this is cool. And you're like, but I don't really like the arms. I think it needs more options. So go back to the sculptor and I go, could you make me an arm that's, a bit different? I'd like, a Gatling cannon arm instead, please. Because that's cool. All right. So I send him a picture of the print and he's like, oh, I always wanted to see it big. Wow. And then he sculpts you a new arm. And then you've got this model sat there that's a proof of a concept. And it's like, it works, it fits, it looks cool on the table. You know what? We're nearly there. We're almost at the point where I've got something I could release later. And I go through the same process with every single mini. Some of them are not suitable. Some just won't work. Some, the scaling is just completely wrong because for Epic, we had to shrink it down to start with. So to do it justice, you're like, well, no one's going to want to 3D print a 3-foot model, are they? I say that lightly because I have done it before. I printed an Armada ship at Kings of War scale and, it was way too big. So there's a lot of madness in this process. And I think, Ronnie's quite good in that he lets me go in my room and I can shut the door and I can come up with all sorts of wacky, crazy stuff that just is cool. Because, I'm a hobbyist at the end of the day. I like to print. I like this cool stuff. And I think there's probably a lot of people like me out there that just like cool stuff. It doesn't always have to make sense. There's no reason you need to print those Titans. But why not? It's fun. And I think if that translates to the game and becomes a thing people can buy and becomes a thing that could, push the story on a bit more, or push the game a bit better, or have bigger battles using cool big stuff, why wouldn't you? It's fun.
Yeah, we do a lot of we try to have a lot of our tournaments at bigger events, bigger conventions. We get lots of foot traffic past the tables of people, coming in, taking photos of our armies and that sort of thing. I'm well keen to have a firefight tournament at a con where we have, super heavies on the table. I think that would draw a lot of attention.
It certainly would, wouldn't it? It's a nice focal point that people see this great big giant Titan. And I know it from 40K. One of the first things I got when I bought a 3D printer was I tried to print Titans because they're fun, they're big, they're huge, they're iconic things from the lore. And Firefight has a lot of iconic things that we could pick out from the lore. We have lots of things there, but it's not all told yet. Some of this lore needs to be developed. We need to tell these stories. And I think we're at the point now where we are starting to tell those stories. And the campaign is lore driven. There's a nice narrative that's being written and developed even more. We've got the Nameless as a whole army. And we also have Epic as a source now of what's the bigger stuff. Epic is the home for that. And not everything can translate to Firefight. Not everything. But there are some things from it that you would class as heavy in Epic that are definitely super heavy in Firefight. The possibility is down to you guys, the players, the customers. The more that this sparks and the more people react to it and the more people download those files and the more people talk about it and show off their prints, show off their great paint jobs of their minis, their resins, their plastics, the more almost freedom, if you like, we have as a studio to push and push and push and do more cool stuff. So it all comes down to really how the fans react. Ultimately, this madness that we're trying to form plans with might not work out for everybody. It might not actually do what we think it could do because people go, I don't want that. I just want more plastic troops, please. Or I'm fine with this. I don't think that's the case, but it's always a possibility.
I don't think that's the case either. We've spoken to plenty of people that are champing at the bit to get at this kind of thing.
Hopefully it all works out very well.
Well, that gives us a very, very exciting rest of 2026 to look forward to with the book to come, with the campaign, super heavies on the horizon, and Nameless.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
So until next time, order lots more resin. You're going to need it. Bigger is definitely better. And unleash controlled fire.
Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar defeated. We blaze away. We don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.